Hello, and welcome back. It's been a while. A lot's been going on, and I get so many thoughts in my head, and so much left to say that I think I'll never be able to say everything. But I wanted to talk, first of all, about the power of walking and that initial input energy of the difficulty of walking. Is that you need to just start, just like so many things, and the largest barrier is the thought, I don't want to do this, or this is a hassle. But once you start walking, ideas start flowing, you feel better. There's an evolutionary mechanism in your brain when you walk where your eyes move in such a pattern that you are able to release anxiety and fear, and you're actually able to think more clearly and more directly, paradoxically also more laterally, more spread out. Part of the reason because you're walking in an expanse, and so this is called peripatetic. You can have peripatetic insights, we'll call them, and that's from peripeptine, which means to walk, and path in Sanskrit is the original root, which means a walk. Actually, I was just looking it up right here. Patha, which is a path. So you're walking. Peripatine is to tread in Greek. Peripatetikos. And a lot of times those Greek words end in ikos. So peripatine in Greek is to walk up and down. And that really, really helps. And so many things were on my brain when I was walking. I probably could have and should have and will maybe record a podcast while I'm walking, because the level of insight and clarity that I have when I'm walking is kind of a little scary in a good way sometimes. So also I wanted to talk about there's so much AI generated content out there. It's so bad. It's so bad. So to reiterate a point in one of my shorts that I made, if you haven't seen it, there's never been a better time to create content in so many ways, because the influx of just very low quality, in absolute terms, AI generated content, or at least barrier to entry for that content, where I don't want to listen to something where I know that it's AI generated, it's lacking emotion, it's lacking the timbre of a real human voice, it's lacking the inflection, it's lacking the rhythmic variation, and also the content. It just kind of ruins, even if the ideas are good, it ruins the media. As I don't remember who said this, but it was many years ago, almost a half century or more ago, they said the medium is the message. So even if the message is good, if it's not in the right medium, it's not on the right platform, it's not in the right form, it won't be well received. And so it's very important that you tailor the medium. So when I make content like this, I'm making content for me. Now some ideas are coming back. I make the kind of content that I would want to watch, right? Depending on the time, because if I'm going to go to sleep, I want to listen to a certain type of content. If I'm aroused, I want to listen to a certain type of content. But the point is that there's so much good content. We could say that. There's really good content. TED, if you haven't seen technology, education, design, is a really good, depending on where it is. But there's been some great speakers at TED. So the content is out there. That one of the problems is finding that content. So in that respect, I'm glad that this content has found you, and I hope that it benefits you, because it certainly benefits me. And we're finding now that the new principles of a good economic system is one in which there's reciprocity, one in which there's a reciprocal exchange of mutually beneficial information and emotion. So one of the issues that we have is that the negative emotions, this is from YouTube Shorts, by the way, the negative emotion is more socially contagious than positive emotion. Just being near someone who is a high performer, whatever that means, makes you a 15% better performer. Being around someone who's a low performer is very negative, who complains and who always focuses on the negative, reduces your performance by more, 25, 30%. So that negative social contagion has a greater effect than a positive. And that can be a huge problem. As I commented on one of the videos, I was around, and in this place actually, I was around someone who was very, what was the words I used? Negative, paranoid, and depressed, something like that. And I became very negative, paranoid, and depressed. And so that social contagion is real, and that's why we say that wisdom is built in solitude. And wisdom is something that is within all of us already. We just need an initiator to bring it out. And one of the problems with the way that society is structured right now is that we have a low information density. We have a low information density tolerance. In other words, we're not very tolerant to low information density. So we won't typically watch something unless it's novel, it's extremely interesting to us, it's shocking within a few seconds. I mean, literally, you can, if you watch YouTube Shorts or TikToks, you can find yourself, if you observe yourself, you could see your brain is processing in seconds, maybe even milliseconds. Is this interesting? Does this apply to me? Is this novel? Is this different from something before? And one of the things is that if you follow these rules and these basic paradigms as a recipe, and you think that that's the gospel, this is the way to do it, it's not going to work, because we're so dynamic. We see right through that. And I have an example of that, but I don't really want to get into it now. But the toxicity, there's a level of toxicity that we're very vulnerable and susceptible to. So it's even more important than ever. I'm imploring you to live in your purpose, to find your purpose, even if it's for moments a day. Because if you're not living in your purpose, you don't have a goal. I don't even want to say the word goal, because I don't like goals. And I've talked about goals and systems on this channel. But part of what NorthForm is about is creating these forms through a purpose, through specifically an autotelic purpose, a purpose that finds itself within you. That's the root of educare, education, which is how I see what we're doing here is educational. And educational is a two-way process. So in one respect, it's one-sided, because you're not able to re-engage with me. But that's what other things are for, other products and services. So if you want that, let me know. Shoot me an email. Go to the website, northform.io, and we'll get something prepared, specifically tailored to you in the details. That's one of the problems, is we get lost in the details. That's the worrying brain. That's the brain that's not present. That's the brain that's out of the flow. That's the brain that is thinking that it has to prove something. Pardon my reach. That's thinking that it has to prove something. Thinking that I must show, I must demonstrate X, Y, Z. I must work hard. There's all these implicit things that society imputes us with that we're often not aware of. And to the extent even that, here's another tricky thing. Even once we are aware of those things, we're still susceptible to them. Just knowing something is true doesn't mean that you can actually take effective action to mitigate that. You can't necessarily stop yourself from, I'll use the word, being a victim to that bias or to that truth that you see or that tendency that you have. So one of the only ways really to get through that is to just let that happen. Let things happen as they do, and stop trying to force things so much. It's very much the Taoist wisdom, which of course has the corollary. Sometimes you just need to start doing things. And I don't want to contradict myself. See, here the monitor comes in. I'm over monitoring myself. But the whole problem, the way I see it, is this coercion, either outside of us or inside of us, that says things must be this way. So I'm going to make them this way. I'm going to force them to be this way. I'm going to worry about it if they're not that way. And I'm going to take only actions that make things this way. And then when it doesn't, when we agree with ourselves implicitly, right? We don't say, I'm saying what is not said in this thought process. Then when they don't work out the way that I want them to, I'll get angry, I'll get frustrated, I'll get fearful, right? That's an implicit agreement that we have with ourselves. Whereas a realized being, a realized way of living is taking action in such a way that the fruits bear themselves, that the fruits develop spontaneously over time. And this has been so lost because we've been so conditioned, I'll say by Western civilization, by the schooling system, to convince us that everything worthwhile is the result of force, hard work, obligation, duty, and suffering. And let me know if you disagree. Please engage in the comments if you have anything. I rarely get disagreement, and I don't know if that means that I'm right or I just haven't found the right people. Actually, I got one person that disagreed. I don't even remember what they disagreed with on. Oh yeah, they said something like, what if XYZ took on that mindset? Maybe they were talking about the sense of self-righteousness, which is a very dangerous way to get to that. My way of doing things is right. Right? Anyone who doesn't follow my way of doing things is stupid, right? That's very dangerous. I don't think I was advocating that, but I think that what their point was is that there's bad people, there's evil people who will use what you're saying in a bad way. I can't remember the specifics of what they said. I couldn't find a way to engage with the particular of what he was saying. But the point is that a good philosophy is going to be generally universalist. It's going to apply across the board. So that's why usually when we get into specific, when I talk about things, I find a pretty much universally agreement about that. So I will reserve the right to come back to what I'm talking about there. I had so many things on my brain. I'm going to start recording the specifics of that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Record your thoughts. You need to write down your thoughts. Type them, write them down, put them into a voice memo on your phone. I use Obsidian app. I think it's fantastic. It has a steep learning curve. Of course, you could just use Apple Notes. It's this purple one right there, the purple-looking stone, volcanic rock, Obsidian. You can just use Apple Notes. I use that for years. I have hundreds and hundreds of notes in Apple Notes. But organizing your thoughts is so essential. Because if you can write things down in a clear and cogent way, personally, I like to do it 1 or 2 liners, maybe max 3-4 liners. Incisive, so it makes a point. It's usually a tough point. It kind of hurts. Sometimes it's hard for me to watch some stuff on YouTube because it's like, I know this is true, but I don't want to hear this right now. That's where that phrase, the truth hurts, or you can't handle the truth, comes in. And sometimes that is correct. Sometimes we can't handle the truth. So we have to get in that mode of receptivity where we can handle the truth that we're ready to see and that we want to see, and then take effective action on that. And that's one of the keys here, is that knowledge isn't that useful unless you're able to apply that knowledge, recall that action, apply it meaningfully. So all partial standpoints are due to the profane. They can't be fully true if they don't contain their opposite. They may be logical and rational, but they cannot be truly alive. Wherever life exists, it exists through opposites. It cannot go alone. In Greek mythology, you have Apollo and you have Dionysus. Apollo is the god of, order, discipline, virtue. By the way, the translation of the Latin virtus is strength. So one way to embody virtue is to live in your strength. And I believe that's what true virtue is, by the way, is spontaneously embodying your strength, living in your strengths, sharing your strengths. So one of the new things of economics that's going to arise, as opposed to the neoliberal paradigm that we're still living in, we're starting to move out of now, this corporatist, right? Not free society. We have a corporatist society, not even capitalist. Really not fair to say it capitalist, because capital has been stratified, right? And I'm still resistant to certain things about, I agree with people on certain things, and then other things I don't agree, because I'm not there yet. I haven't seen that side yet. So what is that? Oh, there's a weird effect that's happening. I guess that's light. So there's a weird effect that happens where we need to try, even if it's just for a few minutes a day, to listen to viewpoints that we don't agree with. It's very important. But once again, you take that to an extreme, that won't be a happy life. You're constantly looking at stuff that you don't agree with. You're not going to be very satisfied. So Apollo, order, discipline, virtue, morality, culture. And then on the other side, you have Dionysus, the god of disorder, chaos, freedom, and nature. And they're opposites. And then most of the religions, says Osho, are based on the Apollonian standpoint. They believe in reason. They believe in order. They believe in virtue. They believe in discipline. They believe in control. And really, they believe in the ego. So now he's talking about Tantra. Tantra is different. It contains both, including the Dionysian. It's both serious and non-serious. Nietzsche writes it in one of his letters. He says, I can believe only in a dancing God. It says, the chaos has to be born in a dying star within you. The chaos of a dying star gives rise to the genius. So he couldn't find, I don't know why, I can't hear, sound quality seems worse than it was before. I guess I need to get some compression. Anyway, you cannot conceive of a Christian God laughing, can you? It's a very serious God. A monarchical God is the Christian God. The Christian God cannot laugh. Laughter will look too worldly, right? The Christian God is the very spirit of seriousness, and Nietzsche couldn't believe in it. I think no one can believe in such a God that's only half, it's not a whole. People like Billy Graham can believe it. Somewhere Billy Graham says very seriously that when you are reading sexy magazines, you must remember that God is looking at you. This looks foolish. You are reading a sexy magazine and God is seeing you reading the sexy magazine? The very attitude is stupid, says Osho. It's stupid because it doesn't contain the opposite. You become stupid and dead if the opposite is denied. But if you can move to the opposite easily with no contradiction, if you can be serious and you can be laughing, if you can sit like a Buddha, you can dance like Krishna, there's no inherent opposition. You can move from being a Buddha towards being Krishna easily. You can do this, you will be alive. And if you could do this, you will be tantric, because tantra is the basis of the search for rhythm, which exists between the opposites, for the river which flows between the opposites. Okay, so this book is interesting. It's a little bit wordy. He uses a little too many words for my taste. Back to information tolerance. One of the things about our society with the post-information age, because remember, we passed multiple industrial revolutions. By most accounts, we're now in the fourth industrial revolution. We'll call it post-industrial revolution. Then we hit the information revolution, which started with transistors in the 70s. Now in the after the 2000s, 2010s, we'll say we're in the 20s now. We're now in the post-information revolution, where information itself is being revolutionized, congealed and synthesized into these large language models and other kinds of agentic AI, where the information, it's not about just information, raw information, or words, or books themselves. It's about the distillation of these ideas, how potent the information is, how information rich it is, how actionable is it. Actually, it came up, maybe I can find that another time. That's one thing I still am not getting, was the structure of the organization of my ideas is still, maybe I can just recall it. So the information paradigm of when you're looking at information is it interesting? Is it applicable? Is it actionable? Is it relevant? I had the five of them. I don't remember where I put it because I used multiple platforms. But I did want to give you a quote. Walt Whitman says, I contradict myself because I am big. I contradict myself because I contain all the opposites, because I am all. Walt Whitman. So Tantra, according to Osho, is the search for opposites, for contradictions. Is it still working? Apparently, yes. That's weird. It went to the close screen when I'm in a recording. And we're charging. Contradictory. This has to be deeply understood, these contradictions. Only when you be able to understand why there are so many contradictions in different techniques. Life is a rhythm between opposites. Between the opposites moves the river. The opposites are the banks. They appear to be contradictory, but they're actually cooperative. The word cooperative brings us to this idea of the new idea of capitalism. I don't want to say capitalism, of a free society, of an open society, of an economically prosperous society, is one in which cooperation is the basis, not in which stinginess, greed is it, not one in which maximizing growth is the idea, although that may be an outcome, right? Not the idea that competition is the key to capitalism. And once again, not that competition isn't an element, but actually that the cooperations of opposites. And I'm trying to think of a different word, because reciprocity has kind of become a contaminated word. Mutual exchange of benefit. We'll go back with that. I'm not recalling it. So the appearance is false, he says. Life cannot exist without the rhythm between opposites. Life contains all. Tantra is for all. It's not either this or that. This and that. Tantra has no standpoint of its own, really. All standpoints that are possible is contained within it. It can contradict itself because it contains all. It's not partial. It is the whole sense. It is holy, he says. Okay. You have become receptive. There is every possibility that you will, for example, fall ill, that the illness is real, but it has been created through imagination. Imagination is a force, it's an energy, and the mind moves through it. And when the mind moves through it, the body follows. So remember, don't start thinking about the techniques of Tantra. The technique is against, the whole technique of Tantra is against techniques. It's paradoxes. Shiva, that which is not, the negation principle, is giving all techniques without systematizing. That's the real bugaboo right there, is our need to systematize. He's saying they cannot be systematized. And this is why I always use the word spontaneous, because if it is systematized, it arises in a spontaneous way. It's not a forced, it's not a coerced way. It's not something, okay, they can be synthesized and not denied. Here's the opposite is included. For example, Apollo and Dionysus. And this is he gets this from Nietzsche, I believe, who made this comparison and distilled this information out of the Greek mythology. Dionysus is the god of reckless abandon, of kind of drunken play, imbibing whatever you're feeling. And then Apollo is the god of strength, power, order, discipline. And it's in the union of these opposites that we get what he's talking about is Tantra, is this yoga. And that's the way to live, is that when you suffer, when you have this bad experience, that's setting you up for how to make the experience better. And when you have joyful, amazing, fantastic, ecstatic experiences, that's setting you up also to suffer, to feel really bad when you can't feel that way. But the key is that all of this is really, it's an internally generated process through the interaction of imagination and environment, and your karma, your past actions and beliefs and conditionings. And those three things interacting is what is creating your sense of... Here's another thing. How you feel is largely determined, and this is an oversimplification, just to give you for clarity, it's an oversimplification. It's based off what you're focusing on. And so for example, when I was at the gym yesterday, I was focusing on, I can't even tell you exactly what it was. Here's these blocks of, what will people think of me? But let's see. I was focusing on the wrong thing, so to say. I was focusing on lack of something or fear of something, might happen. Is that what I was focusing on? Or my inability, or it was about comparison. I was comparing myself. I think that's why this competition breakdown needs to happen, because as soon as you get in this mindset of comparison or imposition, I'm worried. And sharing, this goes back to sharing. Sharing is caring, right? This idea that, oh, well, they won't, it's this preconceived beliefs. Oh, how will I be perceived? I'll be looked at as weird. Or, oh, they don't want to talk to me. Or, oh, this is, we're fearful that this might create an imposition on the person. And that inhibits our action. It's this inhibitory response that is very often the barrier to our collective human flourishing. And I see it all the time within myself and within others in various contexts, is that it's this underlying fear that they won't like me, or what if XYZ happens. It's this inhibitory part. I think we're going to discover there's a particular part of our brain, I don't know what it is, that inhibits our action. And that's part of why people turn to alcohol so often, because it turns that part, many parts of your brain, but in particular, it turns off that inhibitory part of your brain, which is stop, don't do this. And it's very quick, too. It's very hard to consciously recognize, because if you rationally looked at it, you'd see, well, what's the worst thing that could happen there? I would get rejected. That's part of what it comes to, the fear of rejection, of social ostracization, right? So all these things that are in our brain are inhibiting us and stopping us, but actually, in our modern society, make us feel even more isolated. By not engaging, by not putting ourselves out there, by not taking that social risk, we actually feel far more socially isolated. So that's a positive. It's a positive feedback loop. It's in biology, a positive feedback loop. And when you put in one input, in this case, a negative input, it actually accelerates the process. Think of it like a wheel. A wheel's moving this way, and you push it more that way. It continues even faster to move that way. So by stopping that, by not pushing against that, we're continuing to flow that wheel of ostracization, isolation. But if we would put ourselves out there and try and resist against it the other way, we could actually stop the wheel and turn around the other way and have an amazing experience, have an insight by engaging with people. But it's our fear of engaging because of usually what people will think of us, or avoidance of conflict. That's a big one that stops us from doing that, which paradoxically makes us less likely to do it in the future. So you need to put yourself out there. You need to take that risk. You need to take that action that you're inhibited to do. Almost like one way to counteract this is, I don't want to do this. Force yourself to do it. Like, I have 5 seconds. Just force yourself to do it. And it sounds really easy, and now I've created a system, so inherently it'll fail in certain ways. But I promise you, if you do that a few times, you'll see, whoa, I just opened myself to a new experience that I wouldn't have had if I had just followed what my natural response would be. And it's inhibitory, and it's social. It's because we're incredibly social, and we don't see all the social influences, and we're also beholden to the social context in which we're engaging. And even once we know these social biases, we cannot really avoid them. An example is jury. In a jury duty, I was noticing these responses that, for example, the voir dire, the jury selection process. It's very biased. It's very playing on social norms. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the whole thing through, but we're almost ensuring that biases are, by trying to avoid the biases, by speaking in a certain context, we're actually creating more biases and actually impeding the process of let's say, what is supposed to be theoretically be as a jury of your peers, right? And it ends up not being that. It ends up being a very, in some sense, partial jury based off of I'm not a legal expert, so I can't really get into the details of it. I'm kind of speaking out of my domain here, but the point I'm trying to make is that we have these biases that come up, and just being aware of the biases is a good step in the right direction, but that doesn't guarantee that we'll take steps to counteract that bias. And it's only in the conscious, deliberate, and uncomfortable, I might add, socially uncomfortable, mentally, emotionally uncomfortable, whatever, physically uncomfortable, whatever it might be, taking those steps is the only thing that's going to contravent, that's going to stop those biases from taking place and continue the cycle of the way things were. So for things to change, people have to do things different than the way that they've been. And we're constantly encouraged to not do that. Again, through schooling systems is one of the main ways. But there's many other ways. And the opposite of courage, as it said, is conformity. Right? So once you conform to the social context created, you're not courageous by definition. The courage is seeing that, recognizing it, and then consciously going against that. Right? That's why a lot of people say, oh no, I wasn't courageous. I was just doing what came natural to me. I was inclined to do that. And maybe that was an inherent response that they had in that situation. Or maybe they consciously had to tell themselves, oh, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway. I think that's where the power comes, going into that fear. And I will tell you from my experience, when you do that, amazing things do happen. So we're back to the katana mindset, the Genki stage. Genki is a vitality, it's a stability, and it's the foundation for personal transformation. You focus on creating your own authentic stability. That's what I'm doing here with you. Moving beyond surface level resilience. By the way, a lot of it comes down to, I don't care what you think. It's a great mantra to take care of yourself. I don't care what you think. So we're trying, with authentic Genki, as we were talking about, we're trying to create a lasting equilibrium, a stability, which projects our strength, that's virtue, by finding alignment within yourself, even amid life's turbulence. All right, so you recognize that you're in this Genki stage with self-awareness. Now, you might feel disconnected, as though your outward stability doesn't match your inner chaos. But here are the indicators: thought and feeling, persistent self-doubt, difficulty trusting your inner voice, or the constant pursuit of external approval. Overcommitting, here's some behavior patterns: people-pleasing, using distractions to mask discomfort. That's a big one today, folks. Environmental signs: chaotic relationships, a cluttered physical space, or an overwhelming workload. Relationship dynamics: struggling to set boundaries, often prioritizing others' needs over your own. The self-assessment exercise: reflect on whether your sense of stability is dependent on external factors. For instance, if blank was stripped away, would I still feel grounded? So those are the stages, those are the indications that you're not in authentic Genki. Self-doubt, difficulty trusting your inner voice, looking for external approval, overcommitting, people-pleasing, using distractions to mask your discomfort, chaotic relationships, chaotic space around you. I know I struggle with some of these still sometimes. Struggling to set boundaries, prioritizing others' needs over your own. Now, here's what it means when you've completed the stage of authentic Genki. Shifting mindsets in your behaviors. So you trust your inner stability, regardless of the external chaos. Emotional reactions become measured rather than impulsive. You have clearer boundaries, more deliberate decision-making, and a reduced need for validation. Emotional milestones: a sense of calm, persisting through challenges, signaling genuine resilience. Healthier connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The next step is preparing for the Shigatai Ganai stage, where you'll embrace acceptance. Shigata Ganai. And the signs that you're ready for the Shigata Ganai is, internally, you'll feel curiosity and to face uncomfortable truths or explore unresolved patterns. Transition challenges: fear of letting go of control, as stability may feel fragile initially. Preparation exercise: journaling on. Sorry about that. A curiosity to face uncomfortable truths. That's an internal signal. Fear of letting... Oh, I already said that. Sorry. The preparation exercise: journaling, building a support system. Surround yourself with individuals who encourage vulnerability and growth. Even with progress, it is easy to backslide. He says, early warning signs are falling back into overcommitting, relying on external validation for confidence. High pressure situations are triggers, unresolved emotional conflicts, and criticism from others. Stages to avoid regressing to. If you lose your footing, it's easy to retreat to superficial stability or old habits. So prevention strategies incorporate mindfulness practices like meditation to anchor yourself. Use grounding techniques like deep breathing when overwhelmed. Recovery practices. If regression does occur, revisit earlier exercises, focusing on internal versus external stability. Use your inner calm as a foundation for the acceptance required. Sustaining. Maintain habits, integration. Create a personal, I like this, a stability manifesto, listing the core principles that keep you grounded. Revisit this during moments of doubt. The Genki stage is where transformation begins. It equips you with the strength to face life authentically and the resilience to navigate what lies ahead. By rooting yourself in true stability, you're not just preparing for the journey, you're creating the foundation for the later stages. The foundation for change. Japanese craftsman obsession with perfecting the base of the blade. In a small workshop tucked away in the quiet alleys of Kanazawa, Japan, an elderly craftsman named Takumi spends his days laboring over the base of a katana. The rhythmic sound of his hammer striking steel is a constant companion in his workshop, a place where time seems to slow. The outside world fades away. His face is etched with years of experience, yet his eyes still gleam with the intensity of someone who sees each piece of metal not just as a raw material, but as a vessel of possibility. Takumi is not just any craftsman, he's a master in the ancient art of katana forging, a process passed down through generations. For decades, he's dedicated himself to perfecting the sword, focusing not only on the final sharp edge, but also on the overlooked foundation, the base of the blade. Most people are mesmerized by the blade's sharpness, its beauty, and its lethal precision. But Takumi knows something that most don't. The true strength of the katana comes from its base, the spine that holds the edge together and provides a sword with the balance of power it needs to cut through anything with precision. As the hammer falls against the steel, sparks fly, but Takumi is not merely reacting to the metal's resistance, he's listening, feeling the vibration that travels through the handle into his hands. He feels the rhythm of the blade, sensing if it is right, if the foundation is solid enough to hold what will come next. He focuses on every minute detail, carefully shaping the base of the katana with the utmost care, making small but significant adjustments as he goes. He's obsessed with perfection, not because it's an obsession with the outcome, but because it's an obsession with the process, the belief that a strong base will shape the final product. For Takumi, this obsession is not just about craftsmanship, it's about honor. The katana he's forging is an embodiment of his entire life's work, a representation of the values and dedication he has put into perfecting his craft. Every curve, every indentation, every fold of the steel is marked with his years of learning, of striving for something deeper than mere aesthetics. But the work is never easy. Sometimes the metal doesn't bend the way he wants. Sometimes it cracks and he must start over. The base is the most challenging part of the process, for if it isn't done right, the blade will fail to live up to its full potential. The katana might look beautiful, but without a strong foundation, it will lack the strength to endure the test of time. We're 20% of the way done with the katana mindset, by the way. One day, after several hours of intense focus, Takumi steps back, his hands covered in sweat and soot. The base of the katana is nearly complete, and he knows that the true test of his work lies ahead. The rest of the forging process will refine the edges and shape the blade, but it's the foundation, the part that's unseen by most, that will determine whether this katana can withstand the forces it will face. When Takumi has spent decades perfecting his embodiment of the larger principle, true strength comes not from what is visible, but from what lies beneath the surface. In the world of katana forging, the most important work is often the least celebrated, the foundation that allows the rest of the blade to exist in harmony. And it is this very foundation that parallels the process of personal transformation. Just like the katana, we must first focus on building a strong base, an authentic, stable foundation before we can expect to grow and change in meaningful ways. In the context of personal transformation, the foundation is what enables growth and changes to endure. Just as the katana must have a solid base for the blade to hold its sharp edge, we too must establish a strong foundation of self-awareness, discipline, and authenticity in order to build meaningful changes in our lives. Takumi's obsessive attention to detail and dedication to creating a perfect base reminds us that changes don't happen all at once. It requires patience, precision, and an understanding that the true power of transformation comes not from flashy outcomes, but from the inner work, the building of the unseen foundation. This focus on building a solid base speaks directly to the first stage of transformation, Genki, the ability to find authentic stability. If we don't get the foundation right, everything else we try to build on top will be shaky, superficial, and ultimately unfulfilling. By following Takumi's example of obsession over small, unseen details, we can create a life that isn't just built on surface-level stability, but on something far more enduring and resilient. The Japanese craftsman approach offers an important lesson for us. Transformation isn't about achieving perfection quickly. It's about the patient work of creating a strong foundation from which growth can naturally occur. This foundation isn't just physical, like the metal of the katana, but mental and emotional as well. It's about building a life that's strong enough to weather the challenges and changes that inevitably come our way. And as we move forward in exploring the stages of authentic transformation, Takumi's work will serve as a reminder that the most powerful changes begin not with grand gestures, but with the quiet, careful work of laying a strong foundation. A stable base is not only the starting point of the katana, it's also the heart of the transformation process itself. The craftsman's dedication to the unseen foundation mirrors the importance of resilience in our own lives. Stability isn't the end point, but it's the foundation. Resilience is the key to handling instability. Stability is often seen as the ultimate goal, a state of being unshaken, unwavering, serene. Many people spend their lives striving to reach a point where things feel, quote, steady. But what if true strength doesn't lie in achieving this unchanging state? What if stability isn't the end point, but rather the foundation upon which resilience is built? Stability, in its truest form, is not about being unmovable. It's about being stable enough to handle the inevitable turbulences of life. In the world of personal transformation, the goal isn't to construct a life that is free from challenges, conflicts, or discomforts. Such a life doesn't exist. Instead, true strength comes from learning how to weather life's inevitable storms. Stability, in this sense, becomes the bedrock that supports resilience, the ability to remain grounded despite chaos and uncertainty. The illusion of perfection, why stability alone isn't enough. Let's begin by looking at how people often misunderstand stability. When we talk about being stable, many envision an unshakable, flawless existence. This is where the idea of surface-level stability comes in, an appearance of balance that hides the cracks beneath the surface. On social media, we see perfectly curated lives, families that seem to have it all together, and individuals who appear to be perpetually calm, composed, and unbothered by life's struggles. But the version of stability, this version, is for the most part an illusion. Seeing these curated lives that we see is an illusion. Now, I'm automatically thinking of all the negative, deeply disturbing things that we also see now because of the shock value, because it gets people's attention. It's not stable. The surface level stability is what people project in an attempt to avoid the discomfort of vulnerability. I'm guilty of that. I haven't been charged, but I'm guilty of that, of not showing all of my vulnerability, for sure. Maybe because of this long-form medium that I'm doing right now. It's the calm of the outside that often masks the turmoil. I'll abate my inner dialogue here and just read the wisdom of this katana mindset to you. The facade might seem appealing or desirable. It does not prepare us for the challenges that life throws our way. It's not about being perfect. It's about being able to face the imperfection that life inevitably brings. So authentic stability is more than just maintaining appearances. It's about creating a solid core, a foundation that can withstand the winds of change. It's a state of being centered enough that when life's inevitable disruptions occur, you are able to move through them, adjust to them, and grow stronger because of them. This is the foundation from which resilience emerges. Resilience is the ability to adapt to adversity. It's not about avoiding hardship, but rather learning how to stay grounded and find your balance when the world around you seems anything but stable. It means you're capable of weathering those hardships, learning from them, and continuing to move forward. The art of building resilience, how stability prepares us for the storm. Imagine standing on the edge of a great ocean, waves crashing against a shore. A small boat might get tossed about by the force of the waves, but a large, well-built ship can ride those same waves with confidence. Why is that? Because it's constructed with resilience in mind. It's been built with the ability to withstand rough waters and return to calm seas once the storm has passed. This is the essence of authentic stability. It's not about avoiding the storm, but about creating the inner strength that allows you to navigate it with grace. Stability, in this sense, is the vessel. Resilience is the ability to ride the waves. Just as the ship's construction includes careful planning of its hulls, sails, and rudders to ensure it can handle unpredictable waters, so too must we cultivate the mental, emotional, and physical resources to handle life's unpredictable nature. When we focus on authentic stability, we're focusing on developing the kind of strength that doesn't buckle when things go wrong, but bends and adapts to meet the challenges. Consider a person who's built a career only to experience a sudden job loss or economic downturn. For someone with surface-level stability, it might cause panic. The loss of a job could shatter their sense of security, leaving them feeling unmoored and vulnerable. On the other hand, someone who has cultivated authentic stability and resilience might face the same challenge with a different mindset. Instead of allowing the setback to define their sense of self-worth, they see it as an opportunity for growth. They rely on their foundational strengths, like problem-solving skills, adaptability, and a supportive network to navigate the turbulence and move forward. Take, for example, the story of a business leader who faced an economic crisis. During the 2008 financial crash, many companies crumbled under the weight of uncertainty. However, there were a few leaders who not only kept their businesses afloat, but even emerged stronger. These leaders didn't have a perfect, unshakable foundation. They faced losses, difficult decisions, and challenges along the way. What set them apart was their ability to remain calm, assess the situation objectively, and make the necessary changes to adapt to the shifting landscape. They exhibited resilience by staying rooted in their purpose and vision, adjusting their strategies, and learning from their mistakes. Similarly, on a personal level, someone who is resilient may lose a loved one or face a health crisis. While the grief and challenges are real, they are able to lean into their support system, reflect on their values, and continue moving forward. They don't deny the pain, but are equipped to endure it and emerge stronger. The link between stability and growth. I do apologize for that weed whacker or leaf blower going on in the background. A strong foundation for transformation. Resilience is built upon a foundation of authentic stability. We cannot expect to thrive in the midst of hardship if we haven't first cultivated a sense of groundedness. Stability isn't the end of the journey, it's the beginning. And just like Takumi's dedication to perfecting the foundation of a katana, it's the painstaking work of establishing this foundation that gives us the strength to face life's challenges head on. The process of transformation doesn't start when we're at rock bottom. It starts long before we reach that point. Just like a craftsman ensures that the katana's base is perfectly aligned before moving to a more visible elements, we must take the time to build our internal foundation. And just as the katana's sharp edge only works because of the solid base that holds it, so too our ability to endure life's storms relies on the foundational stability we've built in our hearts and minds. It isn't something that can be done overnight. It requires reflection, discipline, and understanding that growth is a long-term process. It's the ability to remain adaptable and flexible in the face of adversity and to stay grounded even as life changes around you. Resilience is not about returning to where you were before the storm. It's about building something stronger and more flexible in the face of the storm. So create a resilience inventory is his action step here. So building resilience is not just a conceptual exercise. It's about putting the work into practice. A resilience inventory, quote unquote, is a personalized toolkit, resilience inventory, a roadmap of the skills, habits, and support systems that will help you withstand and grow through life's challenges. Just like a craftsman preparing the materials for the creation of katana, you must identify the elements that will form the foundation of your resilience. The inventory will serve as your guide to navigating adversity with grace and strength. Let's break down the components of your resilience inventory, skills, habits, and people, and how you can begin actively cultivating each one. Skills. Your resilience toolbox. Your skills are the practical tools that you rely on when the going gets tough. These are the techniques and abilities that will help you navigate change and adversity. Building resilience requires self-awareness and a commitment to growing these foundational skills. Identify core skills. Start by reflecting on the skills you already have that contribute to your resilience. They might include problem solving, adaptability, emotional regulation, decision making, stress management. So those are your core skills. Identify your core skills. This is a good exercise. Next, identify is the skills you need to build in order to strengthen your resilience, like conflict resolution, like communication. I'm going to add into here. Most conflict resolution is an important skill, but a lot of times we don't even get to that stage of facing that conflict, of speaking up, of being disagreeable enough to have a productive conversation because of the fear of what might happen, which, by the way, most of the time the thing that you think is going to happen is really not going to happen. But yes, conflict resolution. Communication, being able to articulate your thoughts and feelings, particularly in times of stress. Mindfulness or meditation practices for when you're feeling chaotic, or emotional regulation for mental clarity. Time management. By the way, that was one thing I did want to talk about that's very effective, is create a time, and you don't have to do this much to reap the benefits, is a time audit. Audit your time. How are you spending your time each day? How much time is spent to what? So, for example, yesterday I spent a ridiculous amount of time watching YouTube shorts. Probably hours. And I'm not going to make a value judgment on whether that was good or bad, but it was a lot of time. It was more than I normally would spend. So occasionally I'll make an interdiction, which is a fancy word for a stopping of something, a prohibition. I don't even like that word either. A deprivation of something. I will stop myself from doing something. Or it's also called a proscription. I will make a proscription, not a prescription, something that you're given that you're supposed to take. A proscription is something that you don't do. So I won't watch YouTube shorts, right? I think I've mostly almost done that today. Yeah, because it's kind of a rabbit hole. You start and then, now you're stuck in this phase of scrolling. The same thing happens with long form content too. So hopefully if you found this video and you're liking this video, you're able to stay with it. I don't blame you if you don't. Mindfulness and meditation. Time management. That's what turned me out of this. When facing stress, managing your time effectively can help you stay focused and prevent burnout. So the action step is create 5 to 10 core skills that you already possess, and then the ones that you want to develop. For each skill, identify an action you can take to improve or refine it. For example, you might take a course on emotional intelligence, or listen to an audiobook on emotional intelligence. Commit to learning stress management techniques, for example, through mindfulness exercises. Keep the list accessible and review it regularly to track your progress. Making new friendships, that's huge. What we're calling soft relationships. These people who you might see and you engage with them. Lately, I haven't been engaging with them, but there's a community. There's all kinds of sets of communities all around us, but we tend to be stuck in one of them, or even worse, totally alone. I think I reject the lone wolf idea of hypothesis. Actually, now that I think about it, that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. This lone wolf characterization. This is the contamination of media. These ideas that it puts in your head. Hopefully, that's one of the medications that I'm providing for you here, is removing these. And I apologize for going off this book, because the book, it's already systematic. It's already in many ways not to denigrate what it is. It's a great book, but the key that I need to do here is distill the core concepts of this. Maybe if it's a 250-page book, we could distill the key actionable points in 5 to 10, 15 pages. The same things. Anyway, the lone wolf hypothesis, that doesn't exist. And I've seen that, and it's so funny. It's like justifying your isolation based on this bad idea that nobody's good enough for you. No, that's wrong. That's totally wrong. But also, the whole foundation of that, I don't know who the hell came up with that, but there's no lone wolf. Wolves are packs. They go in packs. They're social groups. Anyway, back to my point. We tend to get cloistered either by ourselves or in one particular social group. And that limits us. That's not good for us. We need to converse. We need to have a confluence of energies. We need to communicate with people that we wouldn't normally communicate with. All right. Daily habits are the foundation of your mental, emotional, and physical resilience. I'll try to distill this as I go. This is like an exercise as we go. So the habits you do every day, even unconscious habits, either build you up or break you down. Positive habits are essential for developing resilience because they lay the groundwork for stable, adaptive responses when the challenge arises. I figured out what it is. It's because I don't feel a sense of autonomy. I feel like I'm just parroting whatever this says. So my job is to economize this, to efficientize it, to make it more efficient. Identify that are habits that are good for your resilience. Self-care routines, maybe exercising, maybe sleeping in a certain way, maybe eating well. So just to be vulnerable for you for a minute. I really, really, really struggle with this idea that these health gurus say that you need to have a consistent sleeping schedule. I struggle with that so much. I am never able to get myself on a consistent sleeping habit. I can't. Every time I try to impose it, it never freaking works. And I could see that as a personal deficit, of a weakness that I'm trying to overcome. That's one way to look at it. Or I could just see it as maybe I need to suffer more in the inability to do that until I'm able to do that. Or a third option, maybe, see how I'm thinking live in front of you? A third option could be end that prescription that I need to sleep in a certain way. Negate this idea that I need X number of hours of sleep at X time in order to accomplish X, Y, Z. Maybe that's crap. Right? Tomorrow or next week I might tell you something different. But I'm kind of believing that this whole thing, and here's why. I sleep more and I feel worse. I need more caffeine to get me going. I feel more sluggish. Okay. I have more pains, right? I have more body issues, more tightness. Okay. But I need to sleep more, so I get more tight and need more caffeine and I'm more tired. I have more tension. No, that doesn't make sense. No. How about I sleep just enough that my body needs and I trust my body to give me what it needs, rather than externally imposing, setting alarms. I could show you how many different alarms I tried to set one day, one after another, because of the idea I need to wake up at this time. And then every day is a struggle to, what's the optimal time to wake up? I need to go and get sunlight. I need to go and do this. I need to make X number of dollars. This is this toxicity that I think let's call it silent oppression. That's what we're going to call it. See, now I feel like I'm in my purpose. So I guess my goal, I should let things flow as they do. The silent oppression of society says you must live this way because this is the healthy way to live. Okay, example. And I'm going to be very vulnerable with you on this. When I see a fat person or obese person, the first thing my mind goes to, and this is the unconscious monitor, by the way, this isn't my authentic self. The unconscious monitor comes in and says, oh, that's so... And it depends on the context, because the other day I almost wanted to say, and you know what, if this happens again, I will go ahead and say it, because there's no bad outcome that can come from that. But somehow my mind thought, oh no, there could be a bad outcome, so I'm not going to say that. A lady, and she happened to be pretty overweight. She was going to the gym. And I had a thought, you should tell her that she's beautiful. And I think what happened is my unconscious thought was, oh, that's not authentic. That's not true. You don't really think that. But actually it was. That was the first thing I thought of. And maybe it was because that's what I sensed that's what she needed to hear. It would boost her confidence, something like that. But I didn't say that to her. you know? So I did her and I did myself a disservice by not putting myself out there and saying that. So, anyway, goal setting. Establish clear, actionable goals, allowing you to focus on what's within your control, even when external circumstances are chaotic. That's good. Create new habits to support resilience. Just blah, blah, blah. Regular physical activity, time for recovery, even just sitting in silence for 10 to 15 minutes, that's true, can help you a lot. So I'm going to synthesize this as I go rather than reading word for word, if you don't mind. What time are we on? 59 minutes and 50. I'm going to just keep going. Mindful eating. Pay attention to your diet. Be intentional about what you put into your body. Regularly reaching out to friends, family, or mentors builds social resilience. So, one place of lack I could get better at is at the gym. These soft relationships. I go to this really big gym. It's called EOS, which is named after some kind of Greek god or something like that. I wanted to look up more about that. But engage with people. That is the biggest thing about this silent oppressive force. Says, one of the many things it says, is it is weird to talk to strangers. Yep. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. And I'm sorry to say that is very wrong. This is a stupid, arbitrary program that we've been given. Don't talk to strangers. You might have the best conversation of your life with a stranger. You might learn something new from a stranger. You might make their day. You might be a more likable person with them. You might spread love or joy or peace. You might give them an insight that they might not have known. They might give you an insight to something you might not have known. That's one thing I've purported is this social information theory. That's what we're calling it, is that this idea that social interactions enhances the information available to us, either explicit information about the world around us or implicit social information in cues, information about information, meta information, information about, I'll leave it there. Write down top 3 resilience building habits and practice each one for 30 days. Track your progress using a journal or app to stay consistent. That is one thing I want to emphasize that was useful for me. Having a time audit. How did I spend my time? I just wrote it in a little journal, a little notepad on how long I spent doing each things. The difficulty with that is, are you going to record it in each moment, each category? Or sometimes the tracking is built in. Like, for example, I'll know exactly how long I've been doing this podcast for because I can see the time right on the screen. So maybe the answer is building in a system to where you're aware of the time. I kind of almost think you transcend the whole time. Be aware of how you're spending your time. Are you spending your time well? Anyway, people. Number 3, people building support system. No one can build resilience alone. Key phrase, you can't build resilience alone. One of the most powerful resources in your resilience inventory, taking inventory of your capability for resilience, is the people around you, those who support you during difficult times and help you stay grounded in your values. Your support system includes not just family and friends, but also mentors, colleagues, community members who can offer guidance, encouragement, and perspective. Identify key people who build your resilience. Think about the individuals who make you feel safe, understood, and supported. These are people you can lean on when times get tough. Okay, I'm going to have to read this in my head. Mentors and role models. Sometimes this is where YouTube comes in. You model yourself. Whether you like it or not, you're unconsciously modeling yourself after people. So, for example, people that have been through similar tough times to you and emerged stronger can provide invaluable wisdom. Addicts, for example. Okay, friends and family, or whatever, are your emotional anchors. Says people offer compassion, empathy, and perspective during difficult times. I haven't personally found this. That's the problem with so much advice is like it may or may not be applicable. So just so you know, maybe much of the advice. Let me know. Please tell me. Engage with me if you can. To let me know so I can respond or I can understand. And we can grow or develop together. Community support groups, religious communities, online groups, Discord, mutual encouragement, and shared experience. This is what I'm calling soft relationships. For me right now, the number one way I can develop this is at the gym. Talk to people, engage with people at the gym. The people around you are not just objects. They are human beings with unique, wholly, entirely unique, by the way, experiences. And by not engaging with them, you are doing yourself a disservice, particularly for someone like me who doesn't really have a family that provides support. They provide certain physical supports. Yeah, so I guess it depends on the type of support. But in terms of social support, emotional support, and that can be true. I don't want to say that I don't have a supportive family, but a lot of times those are found in just the everyday people that you may or may not see in your job, at your community centers, at a gym. So strengthen your relationships. It's important to identify who your key supporters are, and it's equally important to nurture those relationships. Resilience isn't about turning to others in times of need. It's about consistently investing in deepening the connections. Be proactive in offering support. Check in with others in their life to offer support when they need it. It creates a mutual system of trust. Yeah, that's something I could work on. Checking in more often. Anyway, setting boundaries. While it's important to lean on others, you also need to know when to say no and when to step back from relationships that are draining or toxic. Or you can seek professional support. Create a list of key people in your life, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to skip through some of this stuff. Okay. Shikatagarenai. Witnessing hospital patients' acceptance of their terminal illness in Japan. Building resilience isn't about, to close the previous point, isn't just about reacting to adversity. It's about preparing yourself so that when challenges come, you can meet them with a sense of purpose, strength, and adaptability. Okay. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly as I sat in the sterile waiting room of the hospital, my mind racing in a haze of uncertainty. I had just come from my own appointment, a routine checkup that had me contemplating more than just my health. I was waiting for a friend who had been admitted, but in the moments between thoughts, I found myself observing the patients, the caregivers, the subtle ways people interacted in the quiet corridors. I was in Japan in a hospital known for its excellence in both care and patient management, a place where respect for the process of life and death was seamlessly woven into the hospital culture. It was during one of these moments, sitting in the waiting room, that I witnessed something profound, a scene I will never forget. In front of me was a woman, probably in her late 60s, sitting with her family. She looked serene, but her eyes told a different story. They were filled with a deep sorrow, yet also an acceptance that went beyond simple resignation. There was a calmness in her demeanor that I hadn't expected considering the circumstances. I overheard snippets of conversation, the low, respectful tones of her children gently speaking with her, offering support. But there was no desperation in their voices, no frantic sense of trying to change what seemed unchangeable. The woman, I later learned, had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Her prognosis was grim, and while her family quietly discussed potential treatments, I noticed her face never wavered in its stoic composure. Her acceptance of the situation was palpable, and there was a sense that she had reached a place of peace that many others, myself included, would struggle to find. What struck me, however, wasn't just her calm acceptance, it was the way she seemed to embrace this chapter of her life with a deep sense of gratitude, as though she were honoring the life she had lived rather than focusing on the inevitable end. The doctor had spoken to her softly about her options, but there was no confusion in her gaze, no desire to cling to false hope. She nodded slowly, acknowledging the reality, and she sat back. She seemed almost liberated in her surrender. I could see in her face that she had long ago made peace with the idea of death, a stark contrast to how many of us, myself included, might react in the same situation. She was not angry. She was not bitter. There was no tears or outbursts of grief. In a way, she seemed free from the fear that typically accompanies terminal diagnoses. There was grace in her acceptance, a quiet strength that radiated through her in that moment. After a while, I overheard her family members speaking with the doctor about her wishes. There was a calm, methodical nature to their decisions. They had no questions about, quote, fighting, unquote, her illness. No medical jargon about experimental treatments or desperate pleas for anything to buy more time. Instead, they focused on her comfort and dignity, understanding that the time they had left together was sacred. In a culture that prizes collective harmony and respect, This moment of acceptance seemed like the epitome of balance. In Western hospitals, the approach is often much more interventionist. The emphasis is typically placed on extending life at all costs, often ignoring the quality of life in favor of quantity. That's a big one for me. It's these little moments of insight that keep me reading. The instinct is to fight, to push against the inevitable, even if it means sacrificing peace in the process. But here, I saw a different philosophy, one that intertwined acceptance with respect and grace. It wasn't about surrendering to the illness, it was about aligning with the reality in a way that allowed for peace and closure. The doctor's manner was also notably different from what I had experienced back home. His approach wasn't clinical and detached, but empathetic and considerate. He asked open-ended questions, allowing the family to guide the conversation, providing reassurance without trying to steer them toward a particular path. His presence was calm, and he gave the family the space to process their feelings, rather than rushing through the conversation to move on to the next patient. Later, after the meeting had ended, I found myself lingering in the hallway, watching the family leave the room. The woman who had earlier appeared so composed now seemed even more peaceful, as though the weight of uncertainty had been lifted from her shoulders. It was in that moment that I realized that I had just witnessed not simply the acceptance of fate, but a model for emotional resilience. All right, that took me so long. Processing. Boop. The experience changed my perspective on so many things, on health, on suffering, on how we approach both the inevitable and the unknown. It made me realize that while we can't always control our circumstances, we can control our response to them. In the West, we're often taught to fight against adversity, to never give up. But in Japan, I saw a different form of resilience, the kind that accepts and adapts. This woman wasn't merely enduring her illness. She was living through it with a sense of calm that I can only hope to emulate. That day, I left the hospital deeply moved. It wasn't just the woman's calm demeanor that left an impression. It was the culture surrounding her. It was the way her family supported her decisions without hesitation, the way the doctor respected her autonomy, and the profound peace that stemmed from accepting the truth of the situation. There's a beauty in accepting what we cannot change. It's a form of strength that doesn't get enough recognition in cultures that emphasize pushing forward at all costs. The woman in that hospital didn't fight her illness. She honored it. And in doing so, she showed me that sometimes the greatest strength comes from acceptance. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting on the idea of acceptance, not just in the context of death, but in every area of life. How often do we resist the natural flow of things? How often do we fight battles that we know deep down are not worth fighting? The hospital experience in Japan gave me insight into what true resilience looks like. It's a balance between honoring reality and finding peace with it. It was a lesson I would carry with me for years to come, reminding me that sometimes acceptance is not the end of strength. It is the beginning. The story of the terminal patient's acceptance carries profound implications for anyone facing life's challenges. Her quiet dignity in the face of mortality wasn't just an isolated example of grace. It was a living demonstration of how acceptance can transform relationships with life's most difficult moments. While few of us may face such stark circumstances, her example illuminates a universal truth. There is a profound strength in surrendering to what we cannot change. But how do we bridge the gap between witnessing such acceptance and embodying it ourselves? The answer lies in understanding that surrender isn't a single moment of letting go, but a continuous practice of growth through acceptance. Just as the hospital patient didn't arrive at her peace overnight, our own journey toward acceptance requires patience, practice, and a willingness to look beyond our instinctive resistance to change. Yeah. Shikata gainai. It cannot be helped, is is what that means. The cultural nuances of surrendering control. The phrase shikata gainai is deeply ingrained in the Japanese cultural fabric. It cannot be helped. Often translated shikata gainai as it cannot be helped. I feel like I'm learning some Japanese terms here. There is no way to do it is another way to translate it. The expression speaks to the delicate balance between acceptance and surrender. In the Western world, the idea of surrender and control can sometimes be viewed as weakness or a form of defeat. However, in Japan, shikata ganai is not about giving up. It represents rather a profound recognition of the limits of personal agency in the faces of forces beyond one's control. As I reflect on my own experiences in Japan and the lessons drawn from this phrase, it becomes clear how deeply the concept of shikata gainai shapes people's response to hardship, failure, and even death. This quiet surrender to what cannot be changed is not passive resignation, but an active, conscious choice to move forward with grace despite life's uncertainties. It challenges the Western idea that resilience always involves resistance or struggle. Historical and cultural roots of shikata ganai. Shikata ganai is rooted in Japan's long history of feudalism, natural disasters, and social hierarchy. The idea of enduring hardship with dignity, without outward complaint, has been reinforced through centuries of cultural evolution. In Japan, there is an understanding that much of life is dictated by factors beyond individual control, be it fate, societal expectations, or the will of nature. The focus is not on changing what cannot be changed, but on adapting gracefully to the circumstances. This cultural outlook is particularly evident in the way Japanese people approach natural disasters, economic hardship, and even health crises. Whether facing an earthquake or the death of a loved one, there's an overarching sense that life is full of uncontrollable forces. Accepting them with composure and humility is seen not only as a practical necessity, but also a moral virtue. This acceptance is not about apathy or passivity. It's about preserving one's mental and emotional energy for the things that can be influenced. In modern Japan, shikata ganai serves as a reminder not to waste emotional or mental resources fighting the inevitable. It is a form of pragmatism that allows individuals to move forward in the face of adversity without succumbing to despair or anxiety. In fact, this acceptance often leads to remarkable resilience, the ability to endure suffering without being consumed by it. The role of shikata ganai in personal adversity. I've had the privilege of witnessing shikata ganai in action during difficult personal moments in Japan. One of the most profound instances occurred when I visited a Japanese friend who was grappling with a terminal illness. She was a woman of incredible strength, but unlike the aggressive, quote, fighting spirit often praised in the West, she showed a different kind of bravery. When I asked her how she was coping with her diagnosis, she simply said, shikata ganai, it cannot be helped. At first, I was confused by her response. In the West, we might expect someone to resist, to fight, or at least express anger or fear. But my friend wasn't resigning to her fate in a defeated way. She wasn't giving up on life, nor was she bitter about her situation. Instead, she embraced what she couldn't change and focused on the quality of the time she had left. It was not a denial of her illness, but a profound act of surrender. This acceptance allowed her to enjoy each moment with greater clarity and purpose. The simplicity and the power of shikata ganai became clear as I watched her interact with her family and friends. There was no grand gestures or defiance or rebellion against her diagnosis. There was simply a quiet resolve to live with dignity, with the understanding that some things are beyond our control. It was not that she had stopped caring or stopped fighting for life. Rather, she had prioritized what truly mattered: peace, relationships, and presence over resistance. In this way, shikata ganai can be a tool for emotional resilience. By accepting that we cannot control what we cannot control, we create space to focus on what we can influence, which is our actions, our attitudes, and how we engage with the world around us. My friend's acceptance did not diminish her strength, it amplified it. She was not resigned in a way that led to bitterness, but in a way that fostered greater compassion for herself and others. The paradox of surrender. The Western world, steeped in the ideals of autonomy and self-determination, often struggles with the notion of surrender. To surrender control can feel like an abandonment of responsibility, a relinquishment of power. But in Japan, surrendering control is often viewed as an intelligent response to the limitations of human existence. Beautiful. It's not an act of weakness, but wisdom. Surrendering control through shikata ganai does not mean disengaging from life or giving up on progress. Instead, it means choosing where to invest your energy. I love that. It's a conscious recognition that not everything can be controlled or predicted. It's an understanding that there are forces at play, be it illness, fate, or environmental factors, that we simply cannot change. I'm loving this. Accepting this allows us to move forward with purpose and without unnecessary stress. This paradox, surrendering control to gain control, might seem contradictory at first, but it's central to the concept of resilience. When we stop resisting the uncontrollable, we free ourselves to engage fully with the aspect of life that are within our influence. It's a way of acknowledging that while we may not be able to control the circumstances, we can control our response to the circumstances. Shigatai Ganai and the collective good. Another dimension of Shigatai Ganai is its role in fostering social harmony. In Japan, this phrase often extends beyond the individual to the collective. The ability to accept the uncontrollable is seen as a means of maintaining group cohesion. By surrendering personal desires or frustrations in the face of shared hardship, individuals contribute to the overall stability and peace of the group. Collective attitude can be seen in various aspects of Japanese society, from the workplace to family dynamics. For example, during times of national crises, such as natural disasters, Japanese citizens often exhibit a remarkable sense of unity. The phrase shikataganai became an expression of collective resilience, an acknowledgement that everyone is in this together, and while the situation may be difficult, the response should be one of cooperation, patience, and understanding. It is not the time for complaints or finger-pointing, but for calm acceptance and constructive action. This cultural emphasis on collective well-being can be seen in Japan's response to the aftermath of earthquakes, tsunamis, and other disasters. People line up for food, help one another in times of need, and maintain a sense of order and peace despite the chaos. This is the spirit of shikataganai in action, individuals surrendering their desire for immediate solutions for the sake of the greater good. In a world that often feels divided, this willingness to accept and adapt together is a profound reminder of the power of collective acceptance. The intersection of shikataganai and mental health. Shikataganai also intersects with mental health. Japan has long struggled with the social stigma surrounding mental illness, but the concept of shikataganai offers a gentle approach to managing life's emotional challenges rather than expecting individuals to overcome every obstacle or, quote, fix every problem. This cultural outlook offers a way of accepting emotional pain without becoming overwhelmed by it. For example, when faced with overwhelming stress or anxiety, instead of battling against these emotions, shikataganai encourages individuals to acknowledge them without judgment. It allows people to recognize that sometimes emotions like grief or frustration are a natural part of the human experience, not something to be immediately corrected or avoided. This mindset provides room for emotional growth, allowing individuals to accept their feelings without feeling that they need to constantly, quote, fight against them. Shikataganai in action, embracing the uncontrollable. At its core, shikataganai teaches us to distinguish between what's within our control and what's beyond our control. It encourages us to focus on our responses, our attitudes, on our capacity to adapt by surrendering control over the things we cannot change, and we move forward with the peace of mind, knowing that we've done our best within the constraints of reality. Ultimately, shikataganai is not about abandoning hope or giving up on life. It's about accepting the things we cannot control with grace and finding ways to continue moving forward in spite of them. And it's a powerful tool for resilience, teaching us that true strength comes not from fighting against life's inevitable challenges, but from accepting them and adapting in a way that preserves our peace and emotional well-being. The science of acceptance, the difference between resignation and healthy acceptance. Interesting. In a world that constantly encourages us to push through adversity, succeed against all odds, and overcome every challenge, the concept of acceptance might seem counterintuitive. The idea of simply accepting what we cannot change may feel like a form of surrender or giving up. However, the science of acceptance tells a different story, one that reveals the profound benefits of embracing life as it comes, particularly in the face of adversity. Acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. Instead, healthy acceptance is an active process of acknowledging and coming to terms with situations beyond our control. It's about learning how to respond to life's difficulties with a clear mind and a resilient spirit. To better understand this, it's important to distinguish between resignation, which can lead to stagnation and emotional distress, and healthy acceptance, which promotes well-being, resilience, and psychological growth. Resignation versus healthy acceptance, a fine line. At first glance, resignation and healthy acceptance might seem like two sides of the same coin. Both involve acknowledging a situation and not fighting it. However, the difference between the two is profound and lies in how we relate to the situation. Resignation is a passive, often negative response to a challenging situation. When someone resigns, they give up without a hope of change. It's a sense of defeat where the person feels helpless, as if nothing can be done to alter the circumstances. Resignation often stems from a sense of powerlessness, where a person believes their efforts are futile and therefore they will draw emotionally or physically from the situation. For example, if someone is faced with a difficult work situation, resignation might look like quitting without a fight, withdrawing from responsibility, and feeling hopeless about the future. The individual may feel overwhelmed and unable to take action, believing that nothing they do will make a difference. As a result, resignation can lead to stagnation, apathy, and emotional burnout. On the other hand, healthy acceptance is an active, mindful process that acknowledges the reality of a situation without giving up on oneself or the possibility of change. It involves coming to terms with the situation, but does not mean that we are passive or indifferent. Healthy acceptance allows us to process our emotions, reduce unnecessary suffering, and move forward with a greater sense of clarity and purpose. For example, in the same challenging work scenario, healthy acceptance would look like acknowledging the difficulty of the situation without allowing it to define your emotional state. It might mean recognizing that I could have swore recognizing that while the circumstances are challenging, you may still have agency in how you respond. You might seek support, develop coping strategies, or find ways to manage your emotions while accepting the limits of the situation. In short, resignation is about giving up in a way that leaves you stuck. Resignation is about giving up in a way that leaves you stuck, while healthy acceptance is about acknowledging what is and finding the strength to move forward. Rather subtle distinction. The psychology behind healthy acceptance, science of acceptance, is rooted in several psychological frameworks, most notably acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT. ACT is based on the idea that psychological suffering arises not from the events themselves, but from how we respond to them. When we resist unpleasant thoughts or feelings, we amplify their power and influence over our lives. In contrast, acceptance allows us to relate to those feelings and thoughts in a healthy way. According to ACT, the goal is not to eliminate pain or distress, because this is not always possible, but to develop a healthier relationship with the experience. Rather than fighting or avoiding difficult emotions, we learn to accept them, allowing them to come and go without over-identifying with them. Research shows that accepting difficult emotions, whether it's anxiety, sadness, or frustration, can significantly reduce their impact. In fact, studies have found that people who practice acceptance tend to experience lower levels of stress and emotional reactivity. This is because acceptance allows us to process emotions more fully rather than avoiding them, which can lead to greater psychological flexibility and emotional resilience. A key component of acceptance is mindfulness. Mindfulness involves being present in the moment without judgment, allowing us to experience emotions and thoughts without becoming overwhelmed by them. By practicing mindfulness, we can develop greater self-awareness, which helps us respond to challenging situations in a calm and measured way. Yeah, I often struggle with that, I'll be honest with you. Rather than reacting impulsively, I definitely struggle with that. In healthy acceptance, that's why I'm reading this book to you. In healthy acceptance, we also acknowledge the limits of our control. We recognize that some things are simply out of our hands, and trying to force change in these areas is not only futile, but also emotionally draining. This understanding gives us the space to focus on what we can control: our actions, our responses, and our attitudes. The shift in focus is crucial to building resilience in the face of adversity. The role of self-compassion in acceptance. I have to go soon, so we're at hour 29. We're gonna pick up where we left off on the next section is acceptance and resilience. He really elaborates this stuff, don't you think? He elaborates very, very in depth. Okay, the role of self-compassion and acceptance. One of the key aspects of healthy acceptance is self-compassion. Self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness, understanding, and patience that we would offer to a close friend who is suffering. Instead of being self-critical or judgmental when we face difficulties, self-compassion allows us to acknowledge our struggles. Yes, some of these patterns that he's talking about are so deeply ingrained. I'm so glad he's talking about this because this trying to control things that we can't control is so prevalent in our society, and there's always this fighting attitude, and there's always this I guess I'll leave it there, the fighting attitude. Like right now, my attitude that I'm not my need to control, that's what it is, the obsessive need to control things that can't be controlled. Anyway, self-compassion. When we practice self-compassion allows us to acknowledge our struggles without shame or harshness. When we practice self-compassion, we create a safe emotional space to experience our feelings without the fear of judgment. This, in turn, makes it easier to accept difficult emotions because we're not fighting against them or punishing ourselves for having them. Research has shown that people who practice self-compassion are better able to cope with stress, pain, and failure because they have a healthier, more supportive relationship with themselves. In the context of acceptance, self-compassion means acknowledging that it's okay to feel upset, frustrated, or sad in the face of hardship. This is kind of like an antidote to the radical individualism that we have in America, particularly. I'm assuming you're watching in America, wherever you're. Anyway, in the context of acceptance, self-compassion means acknowledging that it's okay to feel upset, frustrated, or sad in the face of hardship. It's okay to feel upset, frustrated, or sad in the face of hardship. It means recognizing that you are human and that all emotions, even the hard ones, are part of the experience of being alive. Rather than judging ourselves for these emotions, we approach them with kindness and understanding, which allows us to move through them without becoming stuck in them. Acceptance and resilience. I'm going to stop at the next section is the benefits of healthy acceptance, because I have just enough time. Acceptance and resilience. Healthy acceptance plays a crucial role in building resilience. So he's tying acceptance to resilience in the last section. He definitely has a very logical through line here. Resilience is not about avoiding pain or challenges, but about being able to withstand and recover from them. It's not about avoiding pain or challenges, but being able to withstand and recover from them. People who can accept difficult circumstances are more likely to adapt and bounce back because they don't waste energy fighting against the inevitable. One of the key ways that acceptance fosters resilience is by allowing us to reframe our challenges. When we stop resisting what is happening, we create mental space to assess the situation objectively. This shift in perspective allows us to focus on solutions and action rather than dwelling on the problem. For example, if someone loses their job, the first reaction might be fear, anger, or frustration. If the person fights against these emotions or denies the reality of the situation, they may remain stuck in those feelings for a longer time. However, if they practice acceptance, they can acknowledge their emotions without judgment, which opens the door to problem solving and adaptation. Instead of getting bogged down by what is uncontrollable, they can start looking at what actions they can take to move forward, whether it's updating their resume, networking, or exploring new opportunities. Acceptance also helps rumination, which is when we obsess over negative thoughts and experiences. Yeah, that's a big one. Rumination keeps us stuck in the past, preventing us from moving forward. By accepting that certain things cannot be changed, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of negative thinking and make room for growth and handling. Now, my response to this, and I'm going to have to go, but next is the benefits of healthy acceptance is, what if there's things that you want to change but find yourself incapable of changing? It's an action that you can change that you think will make you feel better, but you don't take that action. And my response to myself in this case would be, sort of like having a dialogue with myself, would be, wait until it gets bad enough, and then you will see the benefit of that action. That's me trying to be a guru, I guess. But an example I'm thinking of is cleanliness, cleaning this place that I'm living in. I was thinking about, there's no social repercussions. If there were social repercussions, I probably would clean it. But because nobody's seeing it, nobody's around, I don't really care. So yeah, you have the influence over action, but it's what action. I think part of the acceptance is doing what you can do in the moment with it. What's that quote? You do, and I'll leave you with this, is do what you can with what you have right now. So most problems in your life, let's not even frame it as problems. Just do in your life what you can with what you have right now, which is while you can, which is the only time we have, which is right now. So do right now what you can with what you have. And with that, have a great one. NorthForm podcast, what is this? I think 19 or 20, signing out. Bye-bye.